Have you ever meditated over the idea of death? In the chaos and commotion of our busy daily lives, we often try to ignore or avoid thinking about it. But death remains as real and certain as life itself. No matter how many distractions we seek, no matter how many spiritual practices we embrace or medical advancements we witness, death is the one aspect of our human condition that we cannot escape. If you are alive, you are going to die, and so will everyone close and near to you. Death is the great equalizer. It is a universal experience that binds all of humanity together, regardless of culture, religion, or status. That really is the most profound and inevitable truth of our existence. So, the burning question is, what happens to your body and soul after you die? Does everything evaporate into the ether? Or perhaps it's the beginning of a voyage to something that is beyond our normal human consciousness. Let's explore and unravel this enigma using the secret teachings of a mysterious spiritual book. It's the right time for you to uncover what really happens after death and how spiritual masters and ancient traditions of the world have described the eerie yet mystical concept of life after death. For centuries, the important question of what lies beyond death has lingered in the collective human psyche. It has haunted humanity since the beginning of time, and our species has always been intrigued by the idea of death. There is no definitive, universally accepted answer, but there are frameworks within which people attempt to understand what happens after death. Every different culture and religion around the world has developed its own narrative to describe the fate of the soul once it departs from the physical vessel. These compelling narratives were all a part of a collective effort trying to understand the phenomenon of death in its entirety. But have we truly understood death? Or is it just the beginning of a long journey of exploration, shrouded in more mystery and agonizing uncertainty? That remains to be seen. It is only in the West that death is seen as an end or an absolute termination of existence. In all other cultures and traditions, one can find evidence of teachings referring to death as the start of something new, even more profound than the life experience on the 3D plane. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, comprehended death not as an end, but rather a transition into another realm that we cannot see or understand with our 3D senses. They believed that after death would be the start of another life, but not everyone will be guaranteed to successfully transition into the afterlife. The dead had to undergo a journey in the underworld, and if they passed the judgment, would they be granted access to the realm of afterlife. Similarly, the indigenous tribes of Amazon believe in an eternal return, and death is not meant as an end to existence. It is rather a shift, a transition from the physical to non-physical. Different religious traditions also believe in the continuity of consciousness or the soul beyond the physical body. The Hindu and Buddhist traditions teach us that the soul undergoes cycles of reincarnation, evolving through multiple lives until it achieves liberation, moksha or nirvana. Samara, or the cycle of birth, death and rebirth, is an incredibly fascinating concept in these Eastern traditions. Samara is a Sanskrit word that can be loosely translated to the continuous flow or wandering. It refers to an ever-continuing cycle through which beings are born, live, die, and are then reborn into new forms. This cycle is driven by karma, the law of cause and effect, where one's actions in previous lives influence the conditions of their present and future existences. Every soul is a fragment of the divine consciousness and aims to reunite with the light it came from. But to be able to do so, it has to elevate its consciousness by going through life and experiencing suffering. Suffering in the physical realm leads to lessons that are essential for the soul's evolution. Samsara is seen as the result of craving and ignorance, which keep beings trapped in the cycle. So, The ultimate purpose of every soul is to break free from suffering and end the cycle of samsara. When a soul becomes enlightened, it can finally break free from this cycle and merge with the divine. However, the path to nirvana is not linear or easier. To achieve nirvana, the soul needs to overcome attachment, aversion, and ignorance, and only then one can attain enlightenment and break free from the cycle of rebirth. While many traditions try to answer the question of what happens after death, no other explanation is as convincing as one given in a mysterious spiritual text called the Bardo Thodol. This text originates from the Tibetan Buddhist traditions and is therefore also called the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This spiritual manuscript was compiled thousands of years back and is revered as a guide, a map to the afterlife. It is a text wrapped in layers of rich symbolism and ancient wisdom, and those who have ventured through it and studied in great detail assert that the journey into the afterlife isn't just a passage into a different realm. It, in fact, is an awakening into the truth. This ancient text originated in the 8th century. It was a pivotal time in history as Buddhism was being introduced to the Tibetan population around this time. At that time, Tibet was ruled by a king named Trisong Detsen. Known as the second of Tibet's 3 Dharma kings, he was the monarch responsible for Tibet's official adoption of Buddhism as its state religion. In the quest to bring Buddhist teachings to the people of Tibet, the king invited the Indian Buddhist master Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava, who is today considered one of the most influential figures in Tibetan Buddhism, accepted the king's invitation and arrived in Tibet. Not only did he bring along the teachings of Buddha, but also the profound knowledge of Bardo, the intermediate state between life and death. Padmasambhava's teachings were later compiled into a text which we today call the Bardo Thodol. This revered spiritual text is, however, not considered a part of the standard Buddhist scriptures. The Buddhist scriptures are the direct teachings of Buddha and other enlightened beings. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is rather considered a terma, or a hidden treasure, that came forth when there was a genuine need for such a teaching among the Buddhist population. One of the most important questions surrounding death is what happens to our consciousness. Does it cease when our bodies die, or does something of our essence continue to exist, perhaps in another form? The esoteric teachings of this sacred text shed light on the experiences that a person undergoes after death and explain how consciousness continues beyond the confines of the physical body. The teachings suggest that what we experience after death is profoundly shaped by how we live our lives, the state of our mind, and our attachment to the ego and worldly desire. The profound truths of this sacred text have been found to resonate with the findings of modern science. The latest research in science suggests that the physical limitations of the body do not apply to the consciousness. The consciousness is free, immortal, and cannot be confined to chains of space and time. Some quantum physics have also proposed the idea that our consciousness is aligned with the one, all-encompassing cosmic mind, and hence it is not just a byproduct of our brain activity. This means that consciousness may transcend the body in case of death and continue to live on in another form or shape. One of the most compelling principles of modern physics that aligns with this view is the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only change forms. Therefore, just as energy cannot simply disappear, some scientists propose that consciousness may also be an indestructible entity, existing beyond the physical death of the body. Quantum mechanics proposes that the universe is interconnected in ways that are not easily explained by classical physics. The concept of non-locality in quantum physics suggests that particles can be connected across vast distances without any apparent interaction in space or time. Some proponents of this view, like physicist David Bohm, have suggested that consciousness itself might be a non-local phenomenon akin to a field that transcends physical limitations. David Bohm said, "Space is not empty, it is full, a plenum as opposed to a vacuum, and is the ground for the existence of everything, including ourselves. The universe is not separate from this cosmic sea of energy, so we can say that quantum physics and the Tibetan Book of the Dead seem to offer complementary perspectives into the nature of consciousness and its continuation after the death of the physical body. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the consciousness lives on after death and passes through a series of intermediate states called bardos. Each bardo is developed and shaped by the accumulated karmic energy from one's lifetime. The period between death and rebirth consists of 49 days, and at the end of these 49 days, the soul takes on a new body or form to emerge back in the physical. Going through different bardos, the soul experiences vivid hallucinations and visions, all of which are a result of the individual's state of mind, as well as his actions at the time of death. In the realm of 3D, the manifestations happen through a buffer of time. When we closely observe the relationship between consciousness and the body, it becomes clear that the body acts as a vessel that constrains or limits the full expression of our awareness. In the 3D realm, our physical senses, emotions, and thoughts are filtered through the lens of the body. And because consciousness is confined to a body, it no longer has the power to create or shift reality in an instant. However, it is important to acknowledge that while in the bardo, consciousness is free from the physical senses, it is not entirely free from the karmic imprints and attachments accumulated during life. This is why the Tibetan teachings emphasize the importance of spiritual practice, mindfulness, and purifying the mind while alive. The Buddhists have an interesting saying, "In life you make the mind, in death the mind makes you." This means that in the 3D world, when we think about something specific or an end goal, we need to drag our bodies along through space and manifest the outcome. This, of course, takes time and can be a blessing for so many people who keep thinking negative thoughts, yet do not face the direct consequences of their thinking. But after death, the consciousness doesn't remain chained to the body and can freely become whatever comes into its awareness. So, if you have tainted your soul with colors of negative thoughts, after death, those negative possibilities could all become a reality in an instant. After death, there is no delay between an awareness and its manifestation. Hence, one's thoughts play an important role in what visions and hallucinations it will undergo after death. Once the soul moves out of the body, it can face frightening visions, but those visions are not a punishment from the divine. They are what the individual creates for himself in this life, by pursuing negative thoughts and not cleansing the mind through spiritual practices like meditation. The text also explains that if the consciousness is able to recognize these visions as illusions, it can achieve liberation from the cycle of rebirth and attain enlightenment. When the soul is in bardo, it is still open to receiving prayers, and these sacred words or prayers can help the consciousness navigate the intermediate state with far greater ease. Therefore, in many Buddhist households, it's common to read Bardo Thodol from the moment someone dies to the next 49 days. In this significant 49-day period, the soul undergoes 3 distinct bardos. As the body nears the time of death, it usually experiences serene visions, which may include encounters with loved ones who have already passed on. A feeling of detachment from the material engulfs the body and mind, and the individual experiences feelings of lightness and weightlessness. In the outward sub-bardo, it is also associated with the early stages of dying. This state is marked by physical sensations like hot, cold, and pressure. These different sensations depict the dissolution of the complete physical body and the re-emergence of the consciousness into the non-physical. In this bardo, the consciousness becomes aware of the fact that it has died and accepts the reality. The bardo of Dharma Nirvana is the intermediate state that presents the soul with the highest chance of liberation or rebirth. Whether a soul attains liberation and ceases to be pulled through the cycle of samara or takes a new birth depends entirely on the karma it collected through many lifetimes. In the sub-bardo of clear light of luminosity, the soul experiences unity with all beings and creations. In the sub-bardo of ground luminosity, the soul comes to understand the interconnectedness and emptiness underlying all forms of creation. In these sub-bones, the soul may also visit different celestial realms and meet the deities. The challenge in this bardo, again, is the state of mind of the deceased. If the consciousness is still clouded by attachment, fear, or confusion, it will certainly fail to recognize the clear light of the divine. Instead, it will become distracted by the visions, sounds, and phenomena that arise in the bardo. This inability to recognize the clear light at this stage may result in the consciousness continuing its journey through the other bardos, eventually leading to rebirth. The illuminated wisdom contained in the pages of the Tibetan Book of the Dead therefore reminds us that consciousness is a fluid, eternal force that exists far beyond the realms of the 3D. So, while we are in this body, it's our responsibility to recognize our consciousness and awaken to our truth. The truth is that there is no separation between anything in this universe. It's all connected through invisible threads of light. Similarly, you are not separate from the other people you encounter on your life path. So the moment you focus on negative judgments of others or hope for their misfortune, you are, in essence, subjecting yourself to that same negativity, as you are the conduit for such destructive vibrations. Whether it is through actions, words, or thoughts, your intentions and emotions ripple out into the world and return to you in some form. It is, hence, imperative to work on cleaning your vessel through meditation, contemplation, or simply living with greater awareness. If you live your life with an open heart full of compassion for yourself and everyone else, you will not only transform your 3D experience, but will also accumulate the right karma that will help you after death.